What happens when a 7-time world champion declares with total security that he finally feels that his car belongs to him? Lewis Hamilton has left the paddock of Formula One ice cream with a phrase that, although it seems simple, could mark a before and after in the 2025 season. In this video we will crumble everything. His statement, the technology behind Ferrari, the psychological rebirth of the pilot, and why Monza could have been the turning point that nobody expected. But in Monza everything was different. The fastest circuit of the calendar not only tested the power of the Ferrari engine, but also the mental temper of its new star. And Hamilton responded with a silent forcefulness. It was not necessary to win the race. What he did was even more powerful, recovering from the bottom after a penalty, executing surgical advances without losing pace, and above all, driving with an ease that had not been seen in a long time. Each gesture of his during the slowdown spin talked about relief. He did not celebrate with euphoria, but calmly. Because when a pilot from his caliber states that he is on the car, what he is really saying is, I'm no longer surviving, now I'm leading. That little great detail, that feeling of absolute control over each braking, each traction, each minimum correction, is what separates a contender from a simple participant. And it is not less than this happened in Monza, a sacred temple for Ferrari. The same place where pilots like Schumacher and Alonso signed unforgettable chapters. In that same scenario, Hamilton left his first line as a pilot of the Cavallino, not with a trophy, but with a statement that in Maranello felt as a prophecy fulfilled. The man who had arrived with doubts finally felt at home. This moment represents a psychological break in the 2025 season, a before and after. Because if Hamilton, with all his history, needed to convince himself that this car could respond to his hands, now there is no reversal. There are no longer technical excuses or adaptation processes. There is only the inevitable ascent. And Monza was the 0 point of that ascent. A symbolic and technical place where the pieces finally fit, where the conversation with the car ceased to be a debate and became a harmonious dialogue. That phrase was not a simple comment from paddock. It was a warning. The champion has returned. And this time he makes him dressed in red. The change of speech in Hamilton did not arise from nothing. It is not the type of pilot that launches free praise, much less when its prestige is at stake. His post-carrier phrase was a direct reflection of a silent, but fundamental transformation within SF25. And that transformation was not aesthetic or superficial. It was deep, structural, and above all, technical. For weeks, Ferrari had been chasing a solution to one of his most persistent problems: instability in rapid curves and excessive degradation of rear tires. In previous circuits, this not only affected the rhythm in a long batch, but forced the pilots to compensate with conservative driving styles, sacrificing time for survival. But in Monza, something changed radically. The signals were there, hidden among telemetry layers. For the first time in the whole season, the SF25 showed a linear behavior in the acceleration of exit in curves like Lesmo 2. Beyond the visual, it was the data line that confirmed the impossible. Hamilton was able to get out of that curve at 246 km/h in a sustained way back after return, without a single correction in the steering wheel, without a pinch of survival, without that dreaded rep-top of the rear axle that had until then the unwanted firm of the car. The reason behind this improvement? A completely new rear spoiler, specifically designed to reduce straight resistance without sacrificing traction. But that is not the most important. The truly revolutionary was how this element was integrated with the new suspension geometry, millimetrically adjusted to maintain the balance of the car under extreme aerodynamic loads. This combination generated a domino effect on the general stability of the car. What was previously a constant dance between correction and acceleration was now a fluid line between entrance, vertex, and exit. Hamilton, from the Barcelona tests, had pressed for this evolution. I knew I needed a broader performance window, not only to compete but to experiment. And in Monza he finally had it. Liberated from the load of having to correct the car in each curve, he could focus on other fundamental aspects. Optimize the braking points, choose the best deployment areas of the ERS, and above all, play with the pressure of the tires without fear of losing adherence. As if that were not enough, the thermal data of the SF25 told an even more extraordinary story. Under normal conditions, the surface temperature of Ferrari's rear tires used to range up to 12 degrees during a stint. In Monza, that difference was reduced to less than 5 degrees. This not only stabilizes the grip, but allows the pilot to predict the behavior of the car in each sector, a critical advantage when it comes to attacking or defending in the race. This level of technical precision, which is only achieved when engineering and piloting align perfectly, was what allowed Hamilton to get the best out of himself. There is no magic here. There are science, there is development, there is adaptation, and there is also a shared vision between the pilot and the Maranello engineers who, until now, had not materialized. Many teams bring updates every 2 or 3 races, but rarely produce such an obvious quality. In Monza, Ferrari not only introduced new pieces, he introduced a different mentality. They stopped running to survive and started running to dominate. And that was the basis of everything we saw on the track. A solid, measurable, tangible base. A real change. Therefore, when Hamilton said he felt on top of the car, it was not a metaphor. It was an empirical confirmation. A man with 7 titles in his history, in command of a machine that finally behaves as he expects. A union that, if maintained, could change the fate of the whole season. Frédéric Vasseur, head of the Ferrari team, summed it up forcefully after the race. He returned. And he was right. Because what returned was not only the pilot, but the mind that allows him to reach that level. Hamilton does not need to demonstrate anything to anyone, but he does need to convince himself that he can still be the best. And Monza was that point of emotional inflection. The moment he stopped loading with the weight of the expectation and began to run from the conviction. This type of rebirth is not built only with telemetry or new ailerons. It is built with hours of reflection, with style adaptation, with tense and honest conversations within the team, with silent defeats in the engineering room. With personal decisions such as adopting part of Leclerc's style to find a new way of taking high-speed curves. Patiently, humbly, with a brutal desire to be the best again. For Ferrari, what happened in Monza was not simply a solid performance of one of its pilots. It was something deeper, more structural, more symbolic. Because when Lewis Hamilton declares that he finally feels in control of his car, that not only validates his work as a pilot, it is a direct validation to all engineering, strategy, and technical culture that the team has been trying to reconstruct for more than a decade. For a team like Ferrari, the emotional impact of seeing Hamilton driving with ease in Monza is incalculable. It is not just a technical improvement. It is a restoration of pride, of the legacy, of the symbol. The engineers, the mechanics, the strategists, everyone felt. Because when one of the best pilots in history begins to operate at its maximum level with a Ferrari, everyone begins to believe that something extraordinary is possible. The complete team, from Vasseur to track engineers, starts working with a more surgical approach, less reactive. Ferrari is showing solidity signs that were not seen since the golden age with Schumacher. Not in results yet, but in process. How they make decisions. How they run under pressure. How they respond to problems. And that is the true victory of Monza. It was not the result in the table. It was the internal feeling that there is finally a path. A clear line. A purpose. The Monza Grand Prix was not the end of a story. It was the prologue of a new one. A chapter where Lewis Hamilton, after weeks of doubts, questions, and adjustments, finally finds himself in red territory. But this raises the question that now floats especially the paddock. What comes for him and for Ferrari from this moment? Hamilton now has what he was looking for. A stable technical platform, a car that responds to his hands, and a team structure that begins to operate under his indirect leadership. But the pressure does not disappear. Just change form. It is no longer about adapting. Now it is about holding, to raise, to convert that spark of Monza into a constant flame. The challenge is much more complex. Because when a pilot like him shows signals of recovery, the expectation grows exponentially. And Ferrari, meanwhile, cannot settle either. Having taken a step in the right direction does not guarantee anything in a championship where each tenth is bought with innovation, precision, and surgical execution. Monza was a moral victory, a coup of technical authority, but not a guarantee of domain. The fight against McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull will be fierce, and no team is static. Everyone evolves. Everyone study. Everyone copy what works and correct what fails. Therefore, what comes for Ferrari is a double challenge: consolidating its progress without losing development speed, and maintaining internal balance between two highly competitive pilots such as Hamilton and Leclerc. Because now that the British has found his rhythm, the dynamics of the team can change. And managing that relationship will be key if they want to avoid the errors of the past, when internal struggles diluted any aspiration to the title. The immediate future is summarized in a question as simple as transcendental. Can they maintain this level? And if the answer is yes, can they raise it even more? Because now it is not enough to be competitive. Now you have to win. We must make potential into podiums, podiums into victories, and victories into titles. Only in the Hamilton legacy in Ferrari can be written with golden letters, and not as a last romantic adventure without a happy ending. What we saw in Monza was a notice. The rebirth of a legendary figure, the awakening of a sleeping team, and the reconfiguration of a narrative that many already believed. From here, everything is possible. And that, in Formula One, is the largest engine that exists. Now the ball is on its roof. Ferrari has the tools. Hamilton has the instinct. You just have to know if they can turn that combination into something else. And you, what do you think? Do you think this will be the year in which Hamilton wins a race with Ferrari? Or are we witnessing another emotional mirage in a story full of false hopes?